Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Today we have new amazing stories, so subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. How quickly did you witness a coworker being fired? In my old law office, a firm-wide email was sent out announcing the arrival of a new employee. We'll refer to him as Paul. Paul then made the decision to respond to all of us, informing us that he was aware of our recent legal setbacks, that his hiring was the first move our firm had made in years, and that many people ought to be fired as a result of these setbacks. The guy had no experience and was a legal assistant straight out of college. I heard a crazy shout about a minute after the email was sent out, and then I saw one of the senior partners sprint out of my office and toward HR. And after 5 minutes, Paul passed by, accompanied by the security guard and the HR manager. In less than 45 minutes, he was done. A recent law graduate moves to a new town and works for a new firm for the first time. He had previously only completed brief work experience placements and essentially badgered the boss to get the role he was assigned because, as a regional firm, they couldn't be too picky about who they hired. The boss assigns him a number of extremely simple tasks, such as going over these large files, writing a thorough memo outlining their current status and any disputes, making sure the accounts are paid on time, and then reporting back on how he would move them forward. He was given an unfinished office with the intention that his boss would assess his abilities, such as his ability to follow instructions, and that he wouldn't need to speak with clients or have a phone or email account in order to complete the tasks assigned to him. While he was in court, he took great initiative and went into another lawyer's office. He borrowed a phone and called the client, asking them all about their lengthy matter in an interview-style manner. Could you tell me what the matter was about? How are things going? What kind of progress would you like to see, etc.? The client is shocked and calls the boss to confirm that he has a new attorney or clerk named XYZ and that there hasn't been a security breach or wild scam. Boss goes up, dresses him down for contacting the client, and explains how he was given a simple task and cutting corners and calling the client asking them to educate him about their matter was very damaging to the firm and looked unprofessional. No problems, all seems sorted out, he won't do it again. Only he opens the second file he was given to review and, you guessed it, finds a phone and calls that client to much the same result. Second time, boss goes up there, collects his couple things, and marches him out the front door, had payroll arrange pay for 1 day, bids him a fond farewell, and closes the door on him. I was employed by a help desk. One of the originals in a new contract for a big business had been me. Anyway, after 8 months, I was selected to train a group of new hires. He was an easygoing, humorous man with a lot of jokes. He had mentioned that he needed an advance for rent after settling in with me for about 3 days. I told him to speak with our supervisor, Lee, but I wasn't sure if he'd be able to help because I've never needed it. He disappears on Monday and Tuesday after the weekend. When we were told he was ill, we didn't give it much attention. He arrives on Wednesday and is somewhat uncomfortable while walking. He was hurried to the hospital after discovering that his appendix had burst. His girlfriend left him while he was there, took everything, and stopped paying her half of the rent. Instead of taking a week or two to heal, he was there because he was under contract for the first few months and would need to work to earn money. He showed me his bandages, but I didn't need him to prove it. I mean, it was pretty obvious that he was clutching his medication, etc. Remember, this happened on a Wednesday. When Thursday finally arrives, he's holding a large local newspaper, swaggering and wearing an enormous ass-eating grin. With a huge, proud smile on his face, he sat down. He greeted me as usual and then asked if I could keep something secret. He really wanted to make sure I said yes, even though I said it depends. Well, what the heck, I agreed. He flips to page 7 of the newspaper. It demonstrates that the nearby TD Bank had been burglarized in a brand new enormous plaza in Canada, Ontario, Canada, a suburb of Ottawa where we were employed. I've never seen a newspaper print a clear security camera photo of a suspect before, and this one was taken without a mask. It turns out that he went over with his best friend. This is a big box store plaza that was recently completed and brand new at the time. Acting as the getaway driver, he parked a few rows away from the bank. Looks like he had a letter and a finger in his jacket pocket, but no weapons of any kind. They quickly paid him $15K and didn't confront him about it, only reporting it to the police as he was leaving. After sprinting to his friend's vehicle, they took off, brand new appendix surgery scars and all. WTF. He's told me this so quickly, I decided to wait to speak until lunch and see what would happen. Of course, everyone in our group went out to smoke with Carol, a very talkative and attractive woman. They went down together, and in about 20 minutes, police arrived at my desk and took him into custody without causing any trouble at all. He simply carried on calmly. I knew it wouldn't take long, but maybe a month later, he messages me to thank me for not saying anything like I said. So, robbing a bank is a quick way of getting fired, I think. I used to oversee a help desk call center in the early 2000s. Since it was for an international company, it was done in a full day. Regular cube farm on a sizable 4-building campus housed in a classic corporate multi-story office building. Since there was never much noise during the night, we only had one employee working there. However, not many people wanted the night shift. Greg declared his desire to work the night shift exclusively. Fantastic, I thought. It was much better than rotating it through people with families that didn't want to cover it. After a few weeks, everything's fine. We received a few minor complaints about our poor customer service and lengthy wait times, but nothing major or particularly damaging. In general, we always had some disgruntled customers, and since we only had one representative, the whole time wasn't excessive. Other than the standard coaching I gave when we received service complaints, I didn't give it much thought. We experienced a significant outage one day, which caused our call volume to skyrocket. A few other employees and I stayed late to cover. Volume dies down, I let everyone go home aside from the person scheduled to stay until Greg arrives, and I leave to get some dinner. While I'm gone, Greg comes in and the other person goes home. Greg is unaware that I'll be returning to the office following supper. I return to the office to find Greg has a butane burner on his cubicle desk and pots, pans, dishes all over the place, cooking a full-on meal in the middle of the office. It appears to be a commercial cooking area. He's busy cooking something on an open flame inside of an office, so he's not in the call queue, and we have multiple calls on hold. As I enter the kitchen, I see dozens of copies of a homemade magazine that Greg has printed spread across multiple reams of paper on top of our pricey color printer. While not really taking calls, Greg was cooking himself a nice dinner and launching his Scooter Enthusiast magazine on the company computers and printers. Greg's last day was that one. Which homeowners association experience was the worst for you? Though it's not my tale, a family friend who relocated to America returned with an amazing tale about his HOA. He and his spouse were informed that they would need to join the homeowners association upon purchasing the home, so he naturally requested a copy of the association's rules, but they declined to give it to him. He had to purchase the house in order to become a member of the HOA, which prevented him from accessing them otherwise. He requested that they consider their options and return the following day with a response, which they were happy to do, as he didn't want to make such a big decision so quickly. He therefore returned home, gave it some thought, spoke with a few people about it, and then the following day signed all of the contracts. After moving in, they decided they wanted to paint the entire house a pastel blue hue because they had always wanted it that way. The next day, a letter from the HOA turns up saying he can't repaint his house without permission from the HOA, and they can only paint them one of the HOA-approved colors, which his shade of blue was not. He talked to the few people from earlier in the story again, and they helped him reply. In particular, they were his lawyer friends who provided him with all the documentation he required to inform the HOA that the terms of the contract were null and void because they had not allowed him to read them before signing. He was effectively out of the HOA's jurisdiction, and since he now owned his gorgeous pastel blue home, there was nothing the association could do to prevent him from disobeying any other rules. Approximately 10 years have passed since he moved in, and each time someone new moves into the neighborhood, he makes it a point to introduce himself and explain how contract law operates. It's not the worst, but rather the most entertaining. Our homeowners association doesn't do much these days other than enforcing rules about curb appearance, no statues or fountains, keep your grass trimmed, and other such nonsense, and maintaining basic safety measures, such as keeping street signs upright and enforcing basic safety measures. They're pretty tame about it. Some of my neighbors said that when the neighborhood was first established approximately 40 years ago, they were much more aggressive than they are today. There's a strip of forest that runs through the middle of our neighborhood. I'll refer to this individual as Bob, and there's a house that is located smack dab in the middle of this strip. At this point, Bob was working as a manager at a nearby park, and he was a true Ron Swanson type. As a result of the fact that Bob purchased his strip of forest a few years prior to the conception of the subdivision, Mr. Bob is not subject to any of the rules and regulations that are imposed by the HOA. On the other hand, the courageous young man who established our homeowners association was not going to let this stand in his way. Not at all. He was adamant that our neighborhood would adhere to a set of predetermined guidelines. On the other hand, Bob was not even close to meeting these expectations. His yard was overgrown and crawling with local wildlife, and he kept a boat in his driveway. The nerve! Well, the president of the HOA was not having it. He arrived on Bob's doorstep one day with a packet containing all of the standards the HOA expected its homeowners to live up to. A few examples were the absence of window boxes and front-facing vegetable gardens, as well as other similar restrictions. After Bob had finished reviewing the packet, he calmly informed the president that he would make a note of the regulations, and then he shut the door in his face. In the beginning, there was a fence that was constructed. You should know that this was not a solid fence, but rather a board and rail fence, so that you could see what else Bob was doing there. As a result, the HOA wrote Bob the first of many letters that they would send to him. Following the receipt of that letter, he put a vegetable garden in the front and center of the property. After receiving yet another letter, Bob began renting out space on his lawn to individuals for the purpose of storing recreational vehicles and boats. After receiving yet another letter, Bob installed window boxes. I don't know exactly how long this went on, but eventually it escalated to the police. As soon as they discovered that Bob was the rightful owner of the land, they laughed in the face of the homeowners association. The situation then developed into a civil lawsuit regarding the value of the property or something else, and the judge dismissed the case for the same basic reasons. At this point in time, Bob is retired and spends his days doing things around his house. He tends to his hummingbird feeders, replaces the light bulbs on the Christmas lights that he keeps strung up 365 days a year, which are powered by a massive solar panel that's planted in his front lawn, and is generally an awesome old guy. And our HOA has basically been neutered by the whole ordeal and hesitates to file a complaint against even the most egregious violations. I'm looking at you, family that clearly runs some sort of business out of their garage. For the past 14 years, my grandmother, who is 80 years old, has been a member of her condo board. After my grandfather's passing, she discovered a wonderful spot on the lake. The fact that it was on the water made her ecstatic. He loved sailing, and she thought it was a way of holding on to it. She lives next door to a mean old drunk who's older than her. After she voted against him in the board election, he drove his black SUV into her garage door. He's done this about 6 times over the years. It's always over a stupid vote. Cops cannot get involved because it always looks somewhat accidental. HOA equals nuts. It's because she knows her S that my grandmother keeps getting elected. She looked after my grandfather as he passed away and taught in the DPS. She's not afraid of them. I essentially threatened the man with legal action if he ever struck her garage door again. In our previous neighborhood, the treasurer of our homeowners association had been laundering money totaling $600,000, or $1.3 million depending on the currency, I can't remember, from the HOA, and it was discovered that he was also attempting to steal from the inheritance that his wife had received. The president of the HOA discovered that there were some holes in the paperwork, and he decided that it was time to conduct an audit. During that particular day, the treasurer takes the family on a vacation to a cabin in the mountains, Appalachian, which is a relatively small area, abandons his family in the wee hours of the morning, and then hides in the woods, leaving behind his wallet and his phone. Over the course of approximately 2 or 3 days, search and rescue forces were able to locate him. When something like this occurred, they immediately sped up the audit because it was extremely suspicious, and found money that was missing, incarcerated him, completed the audit, and discovered the full extent of his theft. He is currently serving time in a federal prison. Guys, thank you for all the support and loves. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.